Thank you for coming to Theatre 3. I'm Jamie McCall from PLB. We're a museum and design consultancy based in York. I'm the chair of this afternoon's events, and the first of our talks is called The Launch of the Museum Development Programme 2024 to 27. We have Isabel Wilson, Senior Manager, Museums and Cultural Property for ACE. We have Ben Travers, Programme Manager, the Museum Development of London, and Stephen Lowy, Deputy Programme Manager, Museum Development South East. Over to you.
Thanks very much. It's lovely to see you all. I'm all wired up. Can you hear me? Great. So, this is all about the refreshed, revamped Museum Development Programme for the next 3 years. And as was introduced, I'm Isabel Wilson, Senior Manager for Museums and Cultural Property at Arts Council England. And I'm really pleased to be here along with two of my museum development colleagues to introduce the latest version of this long-running and very successful Museum Development Programme. Many of you will know your local programme in England, but for those of you who don't, Museum Development is a wide-ranging programme of business support for regional museums up and down the country. And it offers a wide range of support, but particular highlights are training. Museum Development is the main provider of museum-specific training, which is freely available for paid staff, volunteers and freelancers. They provide grants ranging from several £100 to several £1,000 to help support the development at your museum. They offer programs for organisational development, which might be focused on collections management, audience development, fundraising, for example, and much more. And they provide essential advice and guidance, including support for accreditation, the UK standard for museums, but also bid writing advice, collections care advice, and again, a huge range of other advice and guidance. And it also provides less visible support, pastoral support for colleagues who might be feeling beleaguered and isolated. Museum Development is a really friendly, on-the-ground, listening ear and coach. We know how much you appreciate Museum Development. That message came through loud and clear during the Mendoza Review of Museums. And our most recent evaluation of the funded programme evidences the amazing reach and breadth of the programme, which in 1 year, in 2021 to 22, supported 1,500 museums with 10,000 instances of support. And we're also really keenly aware that museum development support was vital during the pandemic. Via what was at the time a brand new partnership with the Art Fund, museum development colleagues repurposed their grants programmes and distributed additional emergency grants to help sustain museums through an incredibly challenging period. And they pivoted overnight to delivering all their training online. They set up virtual coffee mornings and other ways of supporting people. And I'm really pleased to say that this reciprocal relationship with the Art Fund is ongoing as a long-term partnership now. And it's really important, before I preface some of the changes that we've made, to say that the 9 regional museum development programmes were already joining up nationally. There was some really good work happening via thematic working groups around training, equality, diversity and inclusion, environmental sustainability and accreditation, and more recently, development and fundraising and data and comms. And they've also been joining up to deliver the annual museum survey as a fully national project since 2018. Amazingly, the last MD programme launched in 2018, and the world has changed so much since then. And in response of that, and to support the needs of museums, we've reframed the programme this time round. I think one big change is that we understand the museum sector better. We've got access to better data insights, thanks in particular to the Museum Development Annual Museum Survey and their skills needs analysis. From our own MPO survey data and commissioned research, like the recent publication around local authority support, but also thanks to the work of other organisations like Birkbeck's Mapping Museums database and reports by our other partners, the Association of Independent Museums, English Civic Network, Museums Network and others. And we know from this recent data that there is a real appetite for training to be delivered online. And we also know that how museums are faring is less about where they are in the country than other characteristics, like whether they're rural or in a city centre, whether they're volunteer-led, whether they're reliant on their local authority, etc. And this means there is real value in working at a national as well as at a more local level. This time round, the MD programme has a stronger emphasis on partnership between the programmes and with Arts Council England, but also with other organisations like our funded investment principal support organisations, the Association of Independent Museums, Touring Exhibitions Group, Kids in Museums, Group for Education in Museums, and Collections Trust. A award-winning, as of last night, example of national partnership working is the Roots and Branches Environmental Programme, which was developed and led by the museum development team in the Northwest and rolled out nationally. And again, it's more about what was already in train. There's been an equality, diversity and inclusion programme since 2020, with a number of in-region programmes as well. And Museum Development England has commissioned a research exercise to examine which approaches have worked best and is planning to roll out a new national programme covering the whole country from this October. So we've now got 5 partners delivering across the country, and I'll talk briefly about how we've framed museum development in line with our Let's Create strategy. In that strategy, we have 4 investment principles, which provide a really useful framework for development. We believe, after extensive consultation, that the mark of a successful museum is that it will be ambitious and high quality in its own context, it will be inclusive and relevant, it will be environmentally responsible, and it will be dynamic. And what we mean by dynamic is it will have the right business models, it will be audience focused, collections will be managed well, data will be used well, and it will be able to fundraise successfully. So aligning the programme to these investment principles will help museums adapt for a successful and sustainable future. And it positions them really well to then access Arts Council England grants. And we're really keen to get more of our National Lottery project grants to more museums. We're now investing around 10% of the programme budget at a national level, and we've introduced 3 new roles in support of the programme. We have a national programme manager who started this week, Sarah Hartshorn, to head up the programme, to coordinate the partnership, to lead on evaluation and advocating for the value of the programme and the difference it makes on the ground. We've got a new data analyst, Anhad Bhatia, who'll make sure we're really understanding the needs and ambitions of museums in an evidence-based way so that we can best target support and interventions. And in late June, our new digital learning officer will start in post so that we can roll out more digital learning modules and opportunities for online training. We believe that museum development has a unique position and role, with staff on the ground with an understanding of the context, politics, needs and ambitions of museums and their communities. And that gives confidence to funders like the Art Fund that their money will be well spent. So a message to any other trusts and foundations in the room: if you support the vision of our strategy Let's Create and consider museums to be vital community assets, please do consider partnering with museum development as a way to distribute your funds with great impact. So I just wanted to finish up my bit before handing over to Ben to say how proud we are of the Museum Development Programme. And if you love your local programme and the support you receive from it, please let people know. I'm sure you're aware Arts Council is under a public bodies review at the moment. And although MD has had a long history and we hope it will have a long future, we can never take these things for granted. So do let us know your views on your programme. I'm going to hand over to Ben, who'll talk about the Museum Development Programme in London, and then Stephen will cover the programme in the South East to give you more flavour on the business support available to you.
Hi, morning everybody. Afternoon everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. Okay, thanks very much, Isabel. I'm going to do, now that Isabel's kind of given the national context, I'm going to do a bit of a dive in to some of the detail of the programme that we're going to run in London over the next 3 years. Can't remember whether Isabel mentioned, but one of the other changes in the MD, in the ACE reframe of MD, is that we're changing from 9 regions to 5 areas. Although that's not going to impact London at all, the boundary aspect, because we're going to stay the same. We're still going to be Greater London, and we're going to continue to be hosted by the Museum of London. Okay, so I'm going to dive into the detail of year 1 a bit in this presentation, and the programme's going to be repeated in each of the following 2 years, but obviously subject to a bit more change. Oh, that one. Right. Yeah. Investment principles. Yeah. So Isabel mentioned these when she was talking. Um, I just wanted to give the context of exactly how we're mapping our program and the key kind of drivers, basically, just so you have that. You see the four investment principles listed across the top there, which are essentially, determine how investable a museum is. So as such, they kind of guide a lot of our work as a kind of development program. Okay, so that's the context of the investment principles in terms of how it's informing our program. But for the best part of this presentation, I'm going to stick to headings which you might recognize more readily as museum development customers of the way in which we work and the way we deliver services. So for instance, under the first heading, skills and organizational development. Roots and branches, still glowing from the glory of the award last night, national programme, which has been led by Museum Development Northwest Manchester Museum, but has been very much an ND England partnership project rolled out in every single region so far. That's going to continue next year. More people are going to be going through the carbon literacy training. And once you've been through the carbon literacy training, there's an opportunity to participate in more thematic events as part of the Seeds for Action program. Thematic events such as environmentally friendly collections care, sustainable exhibition practice, that kind of thing. So that one's going to continue. Also rolling out nationally will be a national EDI program. EDI, an abbreviation, of course, of equalities, diversity and inclusion. There has already been some national rollouts on this. About half of the regions participated in the national program over the last 2 or 3 years. And there have also been quite a few specific EDI programs within region. We have had a very successful one in London, actually, which Rachel's been leading, which has resulted in 44% of the accredited museums in London already having some intensive EDI training. So we're pleased about that. So the learning from all those programs that have been run so far across museum development, all that is being taken stock of at the moment as part of this research exercise that we've commissioned. We hope that research exercise will be complete by about October or so. And then after that, we'll be rolling out a new national program across all 5 areas. So moving on to training. Sadly, we've lost our MDO workforce training role as part of the changes. Nevertheless, we're going to overcome that by buying places on the very significant Southeast Museum Development Program, training program. We're very optimistic that we'll be able to realise significant economies of scale working in that way. And we hope that you won't see any reduction in the overall quality and size of the training offer. Fund the Future, that's an intensive fundraising skills development program, which is run for us by specialists, Apollo Fundraising. We've already allocated actually the first few places in this program, the 4 places for this year, but it will be running again in years 2 and 3. So look out for that one in the future. Supporting museum networks. So that's obviously ongoing activity, something that museum development has always done. We support a huge range of different kinds of museum networks across the capital. It's a great space for organising additional training, sharing of skills. We still do a lot of brokering of skills sharing between museums and through those network meetings. And also it's a great place just for celebrating success as well. So they're obviously, that remains a key activity for us. And of course the annual survey, I think Isabel mentioned this, another key national project. Please do look out for the survey. It's actually coming again soon. It'd be great if we could still continue to get the returns from you, because it's really important in informing our programs, so we know what your needs are. It's a great support for us in advocating for and on behalf of the sector for extra resources. And in London, it would be great to see a few more museums actually use it in their planning, because it's has great benchmarking potential. It enables you to benchmark with other comparable services and set targets and so on. So yeah, just be aware of it. It's always up there on the website for you to use. Okay, grant programs. So today we're launching all of our grant programs in London for the year. And I believe they should all be up on the website as of now. Is Helen here? Can anybody confirm that? Oh yeah, are they up? Brilliant, great stuff. As she wipes the sweat from her brow. Yeah, so they're all up there. Grants are between £500 and £3,000, small grants, obviously. And we'll also be recapping the key details of those in our newsletter, which is going out next week. The closing date for all of them is 8th of July. So do have a look across them and see which ones you fancy this year. I'll just touch on the details of each very briefly. Diversity Matters, a tried and tested route for reaching new audiences, which we've been running for a number of years, 6 or 7 years now. Emphasis on projects reaching diverse communities, co-curation, that kind of thing. So that's Diversity Matters. I'm going to go through it at Gallop because I'm conscious of time. Family Friendly. This one is funded by the Art Fund as part of the National Partnership with Art Fund that's becoming increasingly important to us. It's basically using Kids in Museum audit tools, such as the Kids in Museum Manifesto, to audit the family learning offer at your museum. And once you've been through that process, you get small grants to implement the improvements thus identified, e.g. baby changing facilities, signage, tablets for children to use in galleries, that kind of thing. Climate Action Programme. We're reviving climate action grants, basically. These will be very flexible grants enabling things like on-site improvements, e.g. building audits, replacing lighting, whole raft of improvements of that manner, but also funding for public programs, raising awareness of the issues as well. That should work as a flexible offer. Recharge. This is probably our most important organisational development kind of grant program. We've been running for a number of years now. Previously, last year, it was known as Reset to kind of reflect the post-COVID context. So basically, as we're a bit further on from COVID now, so we've changed the name. But it's basically the same thing. It's the same formula, working with an MDO intensively to identify areas for development, and then grants available to actually implement improvements and address those issues. And last but by no means least, Measuring Up. That's essentially small grants for exhibition refresh and to run public programs in connection with that refreshed exhibition offer. And then the other side of the deal is that once you've had the money to do that, you use ACE tools to run the visitor evaluation of the new offer. So that's that one. So nearly there. One-to-one support. Yeah, so the full MDO coverage, Museum Development Officer coverage of London, giving one-to-one support, that remains unchanged. That's going to continue. Obviously that covers areas like accreditation advice, remains a key activity for us. But more broadly than that, the MDO for your sub-region in London will be a first point of contact to the programme, and also signpost advice across a whole range of other specialist organisations and individuals as well. So that key contact is still there for you. Another thing that the MDOs will be doing more and more is giving more tailored advice on funding applications, and particularly advice on the ACE National Lottery project grants, which is still a great and underused opportunity for museums to tap in some extra funding. The thinking is that MD small grants, in order for museums to build up their initial expertise around funding applications, but then they can build up to the bigger applications like project grants with MDO support. Specialist collections care. We're again going to contract Spencer and Fry collections care specialists to provide one-to-one advice and also specialist site visits as well. All that's mediated through the MDO. So if you want one of those, get in contact with your MDO in London. And specialist collections management support, that's going to be Collections Trust, who are going to be providing that as part of the national deal that Collections Trust have with ACE. So we'll have quite a few, about maybe 8 or 9 specialist advice sessions we can offer to museums. Again, if you want one of those, talk to your MDO initially. We can hopefully organise that. And just a quick, if the slide will move on. Yeah, here we are. A quick recap on what the MD London team now looks like. We were 5, now down to 4. But that's basically who's doing what. Most of us part-time. We're keeping that same metric structure of a kind of London-wide specialisms or London-wide roles, but also for the most part local sub-regional NDOs as well. So we have that same kind of matrix sort of a dual structure that Arts Council and a lot of organisations have these days. So that's it, I think. So newsletter every fortnight. Do sign up on the website if you don't currently receive that. Drop me a line if you've got any questions. But myself, Everitt and Helen are all here today. And if you've got a question about another region that's not London or the South East, we've also got the Museum Development England Partnership also has a stand in the Sector Support Hub area where we can answer questions from museums elsewhere in the country as well. Okay, right, I'm done. I think it's time for me to hand over to Stephen.
Good afternoon. Let's just take this out. My name's Stephen Lowy. I'm just going to talk briefly about Museum Development South East. As Isabel and Ben have said, there's been a slight change over the last few months. We've gone from 7 regions to 5 areas. And we do work very closely with our other museum development colleagues, specifically London, but a lot of what we're doing is quite similar. So where there's commonality, we try and combine to maximise the benefits for the museum sector. Just a brief word about how we're organised. We're a partnership of Norfolk County Council and Brighton Museums Trust. And when effectively the 2 teams were put together, there's a Brighton team which I look after, and my colleague Jamie Everitt is the programme manager for the whole team and looks after the Norfolk side of things. So just to put that into context. So I just sort of show you a map of the area that we're covering. We primarily, well, all the museum development teams support the museum sector, and in particular our core constituency are those museums that are accredited or working towards accreditation. We do have relationships with MPO supported museums and the nationals, but the funding and support is specifically aimed at the accredited museums. We have around about, that number keeps on changing, but it's around about 334 accredited museums in the area, and there are about another 30-40 museums working towards accreditation. As you can see, it's quite a large area, which London is sort of sitting in the middle, where Ben's based. And from a population point of view, we probably account for just under a quarter of the UK population, maybe slightly less than the number of accredited museums in England. So we're a really big area, which is, makes a challenging environment for us to work in. And the mix of museums in the southeast, like most other areas, is very varied, but we tend to be predominantly have a large number of smaller independent museums, often completely volunteer run, but we also have some really significant museums, not only the nationals, but we've got special specialists of national significant collections like Bletchley or the English, the Food Museum in Suffolk, as well as university and military museum collections. So it's a real mix which we're trying to support. Our goals, they're probably going to look very familiar throughout the regions. I've highlighted the ones which are chime directly with the Arts Council's investment principles, but we're here to support museums, as Isabel was saying, is business to business support, making sure that museums are outward facing, as well as the ambition and quality, making sure that they're inclusive, that they're representing the audiences in their local community, as well as the workforce and the governance. And increasingly important over the last few years is the significance of environmental responsibility, not only in how the museum operates, but obviously advocating for these issues. And the resilience element's really important. So obviously times are very financially hard at the moment, and a lot of museums are looking at making sure that their business model is still sustainable. And we provide quite a lot of support regarding that as well. The last point is obviously we act as an advocate. one of our main aims is to be able to say museums do make an impact on the wider community and evidence that, and that's through a mixture of quantitative and qualitative data, and which we work through the annual museum survey as well as local evaluation that we do. So just from a point of view of what museums benefit, some sort of real sort of practical elements is we're running joint programming with London. We also do some programming nationally as well, but most of it these days is online. We also, all our museum team have a county they're specifically working with. So there's that real locality element. So the museum development teams know the ground they're on. So for instance, the Kent or the Suffolk Museum Development Officer will have a really good understanding of the museum sector. So that really helps when we got partners from the Arts Council or other funders who need to have that intel, having that in-depth understanding. Sharing, helping museums, understanding where they're coming from is really critical. And one of the elements which we're going to be looking at, as Ben's mentioned, is obviously a special focus on trying to maximise the impact that museums have in attaining the Arts Council's project grants. Let's see. Bring a bit of a Yeah. Okay. Just again, this will be sort of similar to what Ben's mentioned. We've got our small grants or our grants program, which we have launched. The collections care and the rationalizations grants are now live. So this is available to all museums in the Southeast, looking at how they can look after their collections, but also very significantly at the moment is museums are re-evaluating which collections are important to them. In some cases, it might not be appropriate for them to keep. They may want to pass them to other organisations, and we're helping them with that. That's something that's come up over the last few years. The other grants will gradually come online throughout the year. As you can see, various some business developments, CPD, that's continual professional development, going green, addressing the environmental responsibility agenda, as well as access. There you go. Yes. So I'm just going to play a short video. It's just giving an idea about the support that we provide. In this case, it's regarding equity and diversity. And we collect a lot of data, which we pass on to the Arts Council and we share with museums. A lot of it's quantitative, but we also provide that sort of soft element, the individual impact of how we support museums realise their aims and incubating them as developing a successful organisation. So this is an example of the Hockey Museum, which has done some work on trying to broaden the sort of audiences and tell the stories of their collections to a much wider audience. So hopefully this will work.
The Hockey Museum is the only museum for the sport of hockey in the world. Our remit is to collect, preserve, and celebrate the heritage and the history and the stories of the sport of hockey and to share them with the world. We are recognised officially by the English and world governing bodies of the sport. We were founded in 2011 in the lead up to the London Olympic Games by a group of hockey enthusiasts, and then we've been on a gradual journey of development and evolution and professionalisation ever since. One area of our growth and evolution that we've decided to focus on is quality, diversity and inclusion. And that's led us to the action plan that we've created, supported by South East Museum Development.
When I joined the Hockey Museum, there was a lot of richness in the way the museum was all encompassing. And then we had an opportunity to build on that by attending an equality, diversity and inclusion program by the South East Museum Development, which was full of richness. It had other museums taking part in it. It had guest speakers taking part in it. And it was great to be part of that museum-wide initiative. One of the key outcomes of the training was that we had to have an action plan, which shows how we were going to actually implement the learning. And this was actually refined by talking to the South East Museum Development external consultants who have a great experience about these things, going to and fro and making sure we were on the right track. And our action plan was going to be something that was realistic and achievable. The action plan was approved by the board. We then went on and applied to the Southeast Museum Development about a grant which would then help us and enable us to implement 3 strands, which we feel were really important to embark on the EDI journey. And those 3 strands were really embedding EDI in everything we do, training and development, both for the volunteers and the board, and also bringing out hidden histories.
The embedding part of the Hockey Museum's action plan is focused on making equality, diversity and inclusion an innate part of our culture here at the museum, so that we're not thinking of EDI as an afterthought, but it is at the forethought of any projects that the museum might start to generate. So in that process of we're going to start this project, well, we're thinking about how can we make it diverse and inclusive, how can we work with communities, how can we allow everyone to see themselves in the stories that we tell.
Training and development is a very important element of our action plan. And having secured a grant from the Southeast Museum Development, we used that money to get our training done top down. So we had a day where all the trustees attended a very good and effective training program. We want to take it further and actually penetrate that, the volunteers also at the museum.
The hidden histories element of the Hockey Museum's EDI action plan builds upon bringing out stories from within the collection that might have otherwise been forgotten. There hasn't been any structure around identifying certain types of story that fit within an EDI framework. So the hidden history side of the action plan is allowing us to identify these materials and to bring them out and to celebrate their stories, but also to build community relationships that will help us to have a hockey museum that is completely representative of the diverse hockey family and the wider public.
The EDI journey we've embarked on, it actually brought the Hockey Museum community together. We're talking about it at the board level. We're talking about it with the volunteers. We're talking about it with the other museums. I think it's something which is here to stay, and in the longer term and the future, it's going to actually help the museum get even richer than what it is today.
The support of Southeast Museum Development through the museum-wide programme has enabled the Hockey Museum to position itself better for the future, the community links that we will build, but also the business case as well. When you're looking for grant funding, you need to be able to demonstrate what you're doing around equality, diversity and inclusion for every grant that you might go for. And so as a result of our EDI action plan, there will be structures and a cultural evolution within the Hockey Museum that can only benefit the museum's long-term sustainability.
So that's giving an example of what the sport we do. The eagle-eyed one, you might notice it's a Southeast Museum Development logo, which was our previous iteration. Obviously, that work was done end of last year, but it's the sort of thing we're going to be continuing to be doing. Here we go. Oops, jumped. So it's just a list of some of the programs which we're going to be working over the next couple of years. Things like collections management support, which you're familiar with, organisational health checks, which is helping museums understand where their needs are and then providing support for that. But obviously you can see access, equality and diversity. I won't go through them all, but we're providing a mixture of one-to-one support and programme support, and often working with other partners to help museums. I won't. You can have a look at the structure, but the key point about this is we've got a large region, and all our museum team work with a particular locality, but also the other part of their individual job is to work on a particular strand of work. So whether that's environmental responsibility, inclusion, collections, business development, and so forth. So we sort of have that sort of two-footed approach whereby the museum development officer supports the local museums, but then has a regional vision over the whole area, so they can support a particular area, which sort of helps. I think it helps with us making sure we don't become too parochial, but also we're able to retain that impact locally. And finally, a picture of me, if you haven't recognised who I am. We've got our monthly newsletter as opposed to fortnightly newsletter. So that comes out at the middle of the month. So we just sent one out this week. We share information about our grants training, but we're also really interested to hear what you're doing. And if you want to share some best practice, shout from the rooftops, you want to share with other museums, we would love to hear a copy from you. We've got our X and YouTube channel, which has things what you've just seen, and that's my email contact details, and our website is mdsc.org.uk. But I think that's probably enough for me.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. Thank you. Are there any questions that you might have for the panel at all?
Such a lovely film.
Thank you. Hello there. Are your programs, and I'm thinking particularly about training programs, are they open to freelancers working in the museum sector?
I think that's an area we're kind of thinking about at the moment. I mean, so far, under the kind of terms of funding and the kind of targets that we have from Arts Council, the priority is places for accredited museums, particularly kind of non-national, non-NPO accredited museums, although they can often get in on a kind of waiting list basis if a course is completely filled. But we are kind of mindful of the of having it's a kind of a ongoing discussion with Arts Council at the moment. We're going to come back to them pretty soon about this, about freelance access to training.
I mean, we know freelancers are vital to museums and their development, so we'd definitely like to broaden out the support.
I'd just like to say what we do have done and still doing is freelancers are working with a museum. Applications for freelancer in conjunction with museum, definitely we can support them with that. And also we also run network grants. So it's a group of organisations. As long as there's an eligible partner in there, we can support. So that could include training and support. So you may have a museum and some freelancers working together, and they would be eligible for that as well.
Yeah, and also just to say actually that on our new oversight board that we do have a person whose specific role is to kind of speak on behalf of the freelance community in London and make those kinds of arguments. So yeah, we are aware of those kinds of issues.
Okay, any more questions just while you've got the chance? No, I think that brings the session to a close. If you could leave your little green boxes on your chairs, keep your headphones, and can we show our appreciation, please? Thank you.
Thank you.